Hey y'all, it's David Ducker coming back at you, and today I'm going to be talking about jumping the shark. I'm going to be talking about retooling your campaign, the pros, the cons, what it is, when it's good and when it's bad. Let's start with what it is. So jumping the shark or retooling is just changing the nature of your campaign. One of the fundamental principles changes. Let's say you're doing every session you do a dungeon crawl and you go through a different dungeon or a different level of the dungeon every session. For your first 10 sessions, you've got your format intact now. You know what you've been doing, and that's probably what you're going to keep doing. But at some point, if your campaign becomes about politicking in the city and talking to all these different guilds and nobles and all these different factions and priests, and perhaps proselytizing to the peasantry and rising up a glorious people's revolution. If this all happened in the same campaign, well, at some point you went from dungeon bashing to political intrigue. If you could find that exact point, that exact moment when you switched, that is when you jumped the shark. That is when you retooled. When you went from doing one thing to doing another thing, as your general episodic format, as your genre. That is jumping the shark. Taking something that was about this and making it about that. That's when you retool. And this is not always a bad thing. It's often maligned and people say it's a bad thing. And sometimes it is, but not all the time. So let's talk about when it is, when it's bad. So it's bad when you like doing what you were doing, you don't like what you are doing now. That's bad. It's bad also if your characters can't make that transition. If someone's playing a dwarf slayer from Warhammer and he's got a death wish and his whole motivation is to fight bigger and badder monsters until he finally dies in a blaze of glory, this character is great for a dungeon bash. He's no good politically. He might be entertaining for a couple of political sessions, but there's no reason for him to stick around in a political game. And what he brings to the table is not going to be a lot compared to, an elven courtier or something like that. Some characters really need to stick to their own genre. The Dwarf Slayer, great example of that. He's a dungeon basher. He's a combat machine. Anything out of combat should be him preparing for combat or recovering from combat. That's his life. And some other characters are the opposite. They're political animals. A guild master, if you want to play a guild master, you're all covered in gold rings and a giant chain of office, you got a funny hat with a feather sticking out of it, you're sitting back there, the big fat guild master, yes, and we must recruit into our conspiracy the wine merchants. Whatever you're going to do with that character, he's not going into a dungeon. He's not fighting anybody. He might get killed, he might get assassinated, but he's not fighting back. If he sees someone come at him with a dagger, that's what his response is going to be. He's not going to be, throwing the jab up, defending himself. He's going to be cowering, have some cower power in his corner. So if you are going to retool and reformat, first of all, try your best to make sure everybody's going to be okay with it. My man Aaron would hate a political game. He'd love a dungeon crawl. So if we've retooled, I'd have to, either I'd have to, tell him or get rid of him, or I'd risk upsetting him, and that's the worst of all options, is intentionally upsetting someone. I'm fine kicking him out of the group, but I'm not going to put him in a group where he's not happy. That's way worse than kicking him out in my book. So let him know, make sure he's going to be happy. And second of all, make sure the characters are going to make the transition. So Josh would be happy in either one, let's say, and he would be. But let's say his character that he's playing is questing for an ancient tome in a dungeon somewhere. So now I'm like, oh, this character might not survive the transition. So, I could go to Josh and say, listen, Josh, we're going to retool the campaign. We're going to make it more political. So, is there a way we can transition your character? Maybe the tome is actually in the hands of a guild, and now you become about finding which guild has it. Or we can just say, we're going to leave your character, get a new character in. There's nothing wrong with bringing a new character, especially on a retool. It can really pop the new setting, the new genre. So, be aware of what you're doing and how your players are going to react, and talk to them about it if you're in doubt. So that's when it's bad. That's kind of how to do it right, and why you should do it is because sometimes when they're going to like both genres, switching between them can be really refreshing. If they love the dungeon crawl and they love politics, then when you switch, they're going to be like, oh, I love this and I love that. It's like, oh, I get some frosting with my cookie. I invented the Oreo cookie. And it just makes everything better. It's like I love ice cream and I love sprinkles, and I got sprinkles on top of my ice cream. Oh, how great is this? If you're one of those European sorts who just eat sprinkles on top of toast, because apparently that's very popular in Europe, but not here. It isn't. We sprinkle donuts. That's all that we sprinkle around here, son. But it can add this refreshing, reinvigorating new life into a campaign. And a lot of the times people will jump the shark when the old concept has become stale. I should probably do a separate video on stale campaigns. But if your campaign has become stale, like in a nutshell, you either retool or just end it. And those are, if anything, I'd end it way before I'd think about retooling. Because if you're stale in the first place, there was deeper problems besides the genre. But again, that's another video topic right there. So now what makes me think about retooling in the first place, though, is our campaign, Return of the Runefangs, which I was anthologizing on here, but I've since ceased doing that. There was like one guy watching it, and I'm sorry if you're that guy, but nobody else was watching it. So I stopped chronicling that campaign. But we had new players come in, we had old players leave. And when this happened, and we retained several players as well, but when this happened, I looked at the old players and their goals, which are gone now. And I looked at the new players and their goals, and I said, this whole campaign needs to be retooled a little bit. Because the old characters were all about the politics between noble houses. But the new characters are all about this religious crusade. So we renamed the campaign, retooled it, we jumped the shark, and we said, it used to be Return of the Runefangs, but we're renaming it, retooling it, we're calling it God of Damaran, the Fate of the Gods. Because this is what the players are about now. We got way more players that love this angle than love that angle. And both angles are present either way. There was a crusade going on before, and there are noble politics going on now, but the proportion is reversed. Now we've got a lot of crusading, a lot of religious debate, philosophizing, and all this good stuff. And then a little sprinkling of noble politics and wrangling, and battle and dungeons and war and all that good stuff too, but mostly with the religious debate. Whereas previously it was the opposite, and we had a lot of political wrangling and battles and war and bargaining and bartering and a little bit of religious debate, but they switched. We jumped the shark. And that's okay. You just got to recognize when it's time to do it, how to do it right, and then move forward with it. And, I think it's great. Got new players. They got new goals. The old players have all this great context for the world. Still got these old NPCs, but new ones are coming out of the woodwork. It's really making it much deeper and richer. So those are my thoughts on jumping the shark. Let me know if your campaign jumped the shark. Let me know if it was good or bad. Leave that in the comments below. I'm going to let you go in the meantime. Everybody out there, have a good day, though.